I think we can start now. So, good evening, everyone. Thank you and welcome to the World's Woman Davos Agenda. My name is Malak Akiely, the CEO of Golden Wheat for grain trading. At the heart of what I do is commodity trading, food security, and sustainable agriculture. Last year, I was here as a speaker, but this year I came here to listen and learn from one of the loved ones and role models of the MENA region. So please, I am honored and humbled to moderate this session about the MENA region. And I have to claim it's the last session, but it's going to be the most exciting, inspiring session. So as I walk every day here in Davos, I keep reminding myself with my mission to celebrate life, openness, togetherness, compassion and passion, peace, and to inspire women in the MENA region. And all the speakers here, we are here to hear these stories. They have this similar passion and mission. My guest speakers are the leaders of peace, economic stability, prosperity, and innovation. As you all know, our region is one of the most complicated region in the world. We face extremism, ethnic cleansing, civil war, armed conflicts, education at a state of tragedy with more than 15 million children are not attending school. No skills learning to meet the future jobs landscape in 2030, a threat of millions of kids die from hunger, cholera, and forced displacement than any other known in human history. After I have given you only a glimpse of the challenges that we will continue to face if we didn't act and work from now and join each other to amplify our shared humanity and vulnerability because of the human crisis we are facing in our world. And it's because lack of absence of human values. So we, children, our future generation, will pay the price for it. Yet, this session, for me and for all of us, is about hope. Since there is always hope, it's a tribute and celebration here today, standing. Trailblazing women leaders of the MENA region. By the way, they are not just carving paths, but also architecting a bold narrative of peace, economic stability, and prosperity. Smashing all glass ceilings and stereotypes, and I truly believe is that from our challenges is where opportunities could emerge. So allow me now to welcome our panelists, Her Royal Highness Ambassador Reema Bandar Al Saud, Saudi Arabia Ambassador to the United States. Her Royal Highness Sheikha Alanoud Bint Hamad Al-Thani, the Deputy Chief Executive Officer at Qatar Financial Center. Dr.Alaa Murabit, Director, Global Policy, Advocacy and Communication at Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Sima Ganwani Ved, the Chairwoman Apparel Group. Welcome, everyone. So in this session, we wanted to recognize the pivotal roles women are playing in advocating for peace, economic stability, and nurturing impactful collaboration in MENA region, and also share specific instances or initiatives where these efforts have influenced economic stability and promoted peace, potentially serving as a models for other regions or nations or for male leaders to emulate. Let me start asking my first distinguished guest speaker. And last year, I had the pleasure of joining Her Royal Highness with her special guests from the United States to the Islamic Arts Biennale in Jeddah. So I've seen her many immense efforts and initiatives from sports, peace, politics, women advocacy, empowering youth to philanthropy. So Princess Reema, as a trailblazer in advocating for women's rights in Saudi Arabia, what strategies do you believe have been most effective in driving significant change, empowering women in the kingdom?
Thank you for having me, by the way, today. It's a real honor and privilege to be here to speak to you and to learn from my colleagues who are on the panel with me. I would say one of the most important and significant things about Vision 2030, which is this transformative vision for the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, was listening to our citizens, of whom 50% are women. Were asking to be included. They were asking to be listened to. They were asking to be given the opportunity to perform and deliver to the best of their abilities, rather than being sidelined. And I think when you listen to your people and you deliver on their asks, you have no choice but to succeed, because you win the honest support of your population. And that's where we are today in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. I'm very proud and happy to tell you that the employment rate for women we had pegged for 2030 to be 30%. This year, 2024, we've already reached 36%. So we've upped the bar to 40% by 2030, and I guarantee you we'll beat that, because women are resilient, women want to prove themselves, and we are more than capable. And that doesn't take anything away from our male colleagues or our male counterparts, but we're just as good. We are just as good, and we deserve that place. And today we rightfully have it in the kingdom. And I'm very proud of that. So I would say the most important thing is to listen. But once you've listened, you have a responsibility to act. So the acting on the listening is what is absolutely critical and what makes the change.
I have another question, Reema. So how does the different sector and initiatives will intersect to accomplish this gender equality?
So we've set the magical 3 letters, KPIs, and they are what makes every minister quake, because they have to deliver. But those KPIs are also replicated in the standards that we have made for the private sector. Today, you'll be fined if you pay a woman less than a man. We will find you, because the women will tell us. But if you're not going to put your money where your mouth is, there's no place for you in our economy. Women are an active part of it. Women deserve to be recognized, and that recognition comes with equal pay and equal opportunity. And that's now written into our system by law. And sometimes you do have to make it a law. Sometimes you do have to make it mandatory, because people forget. It feels good when you see your numbers go up. It feels good to get the PR of, look at these amazing young women in my office. But it feels even better when it's true and sustainable. And it feels even better when it's continuous. And it feels even better when it's built in as a mandate from the leadership of an institution all the way down. And so it takes practice, it takes time. And also as women, we do need to be a little empathetic and kind and patient, because we're entering into systems that are not used to us being there. So there's a learning curve. But in the process of that learning curve, the way we behave is what sets the tone. So we have a choice. And I say this to all of the young women who ask me to speak to different women's groups back home. You could be the girls of the business, the girls of the ministry, or the women. If you behave like the girls of the ministry or the girls of the business, people will treat you like their daughters or their sisters. But if you're the women of the business and the industry and the ministry, you are the colleague. And I would encourage you to behave like the women of the industry that you are in.
So let me end the question with what the future look like to you and what the opportunities ahead of us.
So the reality is, I am part of the team of people that were the builders, and the future is in the hands of the next generation, not in my hands. And what has been a fascinating and humbling part of the journey is, how do we design open-ended to allow the next generation to come in and say, thank you for the foundation, let me define my future. My timeline is limited on this earth. I like to feel I'm young, but the reality is, some of us, our role is to build, some of us, our role is to receive, and the rest of us, our role is to project and keep opening and broadening the pathway. And each role in the system is of value, and not one is better than the other. But I recognize my role was to build as the foundation and keep it as open-ended as possible for the next generation to define the world in their terms.
Very inspiring. Her Royal Highness Sheikha Alanoud Bint Hamad Al-Thani, as a friend of you, who know you on a personal level, taking care of everyone around you and enjoying your energy, stretch mindset, zest for life, and leadership skills demonstrated in everything you do. How is your work in connecting young people to employment opportunities is commendable? How do you perceive the role of entrepreneurship in fostering women's economic empowerment in the MENA region?
First of all, thank you to all of you for being here. Thank you, Princess Reema, for your interventions. Thank you, Malak, and the organizers. And thank you to the men in this room, because having you means that you care about the role of women in their societies, economies. Their productivity is important, and it adds to any economic development mandate of any country. Just imagine 50% of the world's population not being productive. That means we're not achieving our economic goals. Now, before I talk about the work we do to empower young people and to empower women in the business and the private sector, I want to talk a bit about Qatar. I come from a small country in the Gulf region, and Her Highness, Sheikha Bint Nasser, has been crucial in implementing policies almost 20 years ago, establishing centers, the education system, social policies to ensure that women are treated equally to what men receive in terms of equal pay. Today, we're proud as a region, actually, in the Gulf Cooperation Council, to say that we're not fighting for gender parity when it comes to equal pay. Social insurances are equal, salaries are equal, and opportunities as well. But each country has its own starting point, and that means that some women have made it to leadership positions earlier than others. And of course, our belief as a small state surrounded by a volatile region, in a sense, is that if our region is doing well, we do well. So when it comes to empowering young people, ensuring that the economic development of the region is achieving its goals, it means it's prosperity and peace for the entire world. So I used to work at Silatech, a social enterprise founded again by Her Highness, to solve the issue of youth unemployment in the Arab world. Unemployment in the region is the highest in the world, and that causes a lot of problems. It causes problems of lack of hope, an educated population that wants opportunities but cannot find them, and you know where that ends. Polarization, having young people enter wrong domains that are not crucial to any prosperity and peace for any country. So our role was to give that hope back to a region that has a growing youth population, one of the youngest youth populations in the world. And it's not just about women or men, it's actually treated equally. But, of course, women have different requirements. They need more support in a sense that it is a patriarchal society in the region. It's culture, people create culture, people change it with time. We've seen it being changed in Saudi at a tremendous and a fast pace. In Qatar, it took time. It was done gradually. There's no right or wrong answer. The idea is it's the right answer. Every single woman needs to be an active participant, and it's her choice whether she wants to do it by being a home, a caretaker, a mother, a sister, working in business, private, public sector. It's giving that choice that's empowering. Now, when we come to our work about social enterprise, the private sector, entrepreneurship, these are innovative ways to create jobs that are not basically a burden for governments. So how can we empower them? Through education. And Her Highness has also launched the Education Above All Foundation, which has educated until today above 10 million young girls in the region. The goal is to double that by 2030. Education Above All is one of those initiatives that are not really focused on Qatar, but focused on the region. Al-Fakhura program, which is focused on certain countries, such as Palestine, where it's a conflict zone and education is an imperative to basically educate young people and give them hope and give them opportunities that they can create from themselves. Refugees in the region are also a growing number. So how can we ensure there are active participants in their own localities when it comes to where they're operating out of? Because laws don't allow them to work in the countries that are hosting them. So just simple stories, like I remember in Silatech where we would pay $20 to buy a hairstyle machine. What do you call it? Sishwar. Sorry, English is my native language, not my native language. A hairdryer. And she was trained how to use it. She created a business. She started training other women within the refugee camp. But think of how simple the solution is. You empower one woman in any community, you elevate an entire community. So that's the power of women. They're responsible, they're empathetic, they're compassionate, and they care. They take care of everyone, and I think that's how you introduced me. Thank you. So I'm going to use it against you all and make sure you take care of me.
I have a follow-up question.
But I mean, yeah.
I want you to elaborate on the public-private partnership and the role of this partnership in advancing economic stability and gender equality.
So I'll go back to our work with Solatic. We've been able to create 180,000 jobs in just 2 years during my tenure in 2014 to 16, and then the Arab Spring happened. But every country in the Arab world had a different approach. Some of it was done through the public and private sector because the public sector welcomed that partnership. Some was done fully through the private sector. It's important. Sometimes it's the government's role to set policies, regulations, and an enabling environment to ensure that young people can be active participants. Women can and are able to go to their workplaces, to start their own businesses, open bank accounts, get investments when needed. And sometimes it's the role of the private sector fully in certain instances where there's no right or wrong answer. The idea is we need to find innovative solutions in any way they come. And I think each country, when we look at our own countries as well, all of us face issues, but in different ways. For example, in Qatar, yes, you see women in leadership positions, but they're not many. But when you look at the education outcomes, 60% of graduates are women in higher education. So there's no pipeline issue. Women are educated, they're able, and they're the ones performing better as well. When you look at the grade attainments, where are they in the leadership positions? Where are they on the boards? So it will take time. I think it's our responsibility as both men and women, as leaders of organizations, as heads of state, as policymakers, to ensure that we are enabling people to dream, to hope, and to achieve their goals and their productivity. And yeah, sometimes maybe it's time for some certain countries to look at quotas to ensure that women are on boards, to ensure that women reach their leadership potential. And at the end of the day, a lot of my friends and family in Doha and the Gulf and the Arab world and globally say, but I cannot balance between work and life, between my family and work. Why don't we create innovative solutions? At the end of the day, it's on the woman. It's the burden on women to take care of the kids, to ensure that the home is operated in a certain way. I'm not saying it's a responsibility, but it's usually a burden on women, and we've seen that during the pandemic. Why can't we give them solutions that we've learned and that have worked during the pandemic so that they can work part-time but still be paid fully? Because I mean, these are just ideas I'm thinking of. I don't know if policy-wise they work, but we need to start thinking outside the box. There's no right or wrong answer, and it's up to countries and economies to decide if they want to be competitive or not. I mean, when you compare China to the US, 300 million compared to, let's say, 1 million. I don't know the exact number, but if 300 people are productive compared, let's say 300 to 1, China's economy is already doing better. I don't want you to focus on China or US, it's just the concept. The more people being productive in any economy means the better that economy is, regardless of which level industry that they're operating in.
Thank you so much. Dr.Alaa. Dr.Alaa Murabit, a very unique person. Your advocacy for women's rights and health initiatives has a profound global impact. From your thorough perspective, what are the crucial health-related challenges that directly affects women empowerment in the MENA region? What's the opportunities and education needed for young youth, especially girls in conflicted countries?
Well, first, thank you. I mean, it's a tough act to follow, and I do have to actually say credit to both of the speakers before me for, I think, touching base on so many of the critical issues. I don't actually think it's as much of an education challenge. And so I'll start with a bit of background. We have this saying, I'm a doctor by background, and we have a saying that says, trust in God, but everybody else bring numbers. And what that really means is anchor it in data. The best way, you cannot solve what you cannot measure, and you cannot actually, articulate the necessary budgets or policies if you're not looking at the data. So one of the core things we did following the Millennium Development Goals when we were building out the Sustainable Development Goals was really look at the data and find that there is no region, there is no country that has solved for gender equality. It's not just ours. There is not a single country that has met the metrics of the Sustainable Development Goals on gender equity. And that is an important thing to note. We can learn from other countries' successes, we can learn from other opportunities, but there's no one country. The second thing we really noted with the Sustainable Development Goals was the intersectionality of these issues. It is impossible to speak about women's economic power without speaking about women's right to agency and decisions over their own bodies. It's impossible to talk about women's right to agency over their own body if we're not talking about the impact poverty has on women. It is all cyclical. We can't talk about women's economic power or women's health without recognizing the impact of climate or recognizing the impact of supply chains. There is nothing that doesn't touch the other. And one that's particularly interesting, just given my own experience working in global security, is actually conflict. Nearly half of the world's population lives in either fragile, climate-sensitive, vulnerable, or conflict zones. We have 110 million refugees and displaced people in the world today. That is one of the biggest populations, actually, if it were a country. Now, if you think of your average peace process, and feel free to yell it out from the audience, how many last 5 years? Anyone? How many? Less than 10%. 90% of peace processes will fail within 5 years. Now, if you ensure that women are included from the agenda setting phase, they're 35% more likely to last 15 years. That is a significant difference in a country's ability to actually build an economy. It's a significant difference in a country's ability to actually sustain a promising education and skill building. It's a much higher likelihood that those women will then go on to perform in high-income roles that do actually create greater dividends for their own communities. And when women are educated at a young age, girls are educated at a young age, for every year of advanced education, you're looking at a 3% GDP growth for that country. For every year, which is a pretty incredible fact. And for every woman who works, she reinvests around 90% into her community, sustaining a cyclical economy where, and I don't mean to put the men on the spot, but the men reinvest 30 to 40%. Women are the backbones of economies. Now, the challenge then becomes, why are we actually not seeing it in practice? Because we have the data. There's no question there. We've built the data over nearly 2 decades now. Why is it not actually happening? I think comes down to political will. And in that, again, our region is not unique. In any business decision, you would simply look at what the numbers say. So global health research and development. Less than 1% of global health research and development resources go into female-specific diseases or issues. Think pregnancy, postpartum, menopause, all of it. Less than 1%. Despite the fact that they make up 50% of the population. Despite the fact that the vast majority of female-specific diseases and issues are recurring. Despite the fact that they're chronic. Just from a business perspective, that doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense. So then the question is, how do you actually move forward? I think there's 3 pretty key things. The first is actually leveraging the shared vision, the data, to Ambassador Reema's point, to actually be able to articulate an agenda. And an agenda is important, not in the sense that we're all going to do the same thing, but an agenda, being able to set a collective agenda is important because we all then have a shared vision. So you'll have your puzzle piece where you might be working on education, or you might be working on agriculture, and I might have my puzzle piece where I'm working on health. But because of the intersectionality of these issues and the lived experiences of women and people around the world, we all have to be working on one piece of that puzzle. And there is no wrong piece. Just pick one. So that's the first, is agenda setting. You cannot go where you don't know you're going. The second is really amplifying and celebrating the agency of women who are doing work today. I do think it's really hard for you to imagine that you're going to do something if you have not seen someone do it before you. I think, and many of us have had to build those role models in our heads for ourselves and have had to kind of create that kind of clarity, but we shouldn't have to. And there is this implicit trust and support. I don't know if you've ever been in a meeting where sometimes you'll be too cautious of even giving your opinion because you're worried that people will judge your entire life experience and knowledge skill set on whether or not you get that one answer right. And I don't know many young men who feel that same sense of vulnerability. And the way that we actually can support each other in that is amplify each other. When you see an incredible woman doing things, say, wow, I'm really impressed. That's amazing. Celebrate her, cheer her on, learn from her. There's this incredible power in mentorship and sponsorship of one another that we often ignore. And our community, this is where I will say our region needs so much more of that. Across country boundaries, across age, across faith, we need to celebrate the incredible women who have been always between a rock and a hard place. In their own countries often said, hey, you're being too assertive, you're doing too much. And by the global community saying, oh wait, you're going too slow. That is what we need to cheer on. I mean, we have Muna Abu Suleiman, who's, I think, one of the great leaders of media in our region. And in the past week alone, I could count on multiple hands the amount of young women who have come up to her and said, you inspired me to speak up. You inspired me to share the voice that I have with the world. That is mentorship. That is power. And the very last thing I'll say is money. Everything comes down a little bit to money. It's true. I mean, we can plan the best agendas, but unless we're actively investing in and resourcing these causes, unless we're actively investing in and resourcing businesses, unless we're actively resourcing and investing in education, unless we're actively ensuring that it's part of the policies, that those budget lines are in our policies, it's going to be impossible to sustain that. It then becomes at the whim of whoever is in power, and that simply does not work. So it's both establishing resource power within our own communities and then recycling it back into the community, but it's also becoming political actors ourselves. And political actors look different in different ways. You can advocate through academia and research. You can advocate through media. You can advocate through policy. You can advocate through economy. But you are, in essence, as a woman in the world today, you are politicized. And you should leverage that. And you should walk into every room as an advocate for yourself and for other women in whichever way that looks. And one of them will have to be securing more resources for women, investing your own resources, and ensuring that the support of women is a non-conditional, and in recognizing, to Alanoud's point, that the next generation needs that kind of support, needs that kind of mentorship, clarity, and resourcing to really be able to sustain the gains that so many have made. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Sima, with your extensive experience in business, what key strategies or initiatives within corporate sectors do you believe have the most potential to elevate women's participation and leadership roles and visibility to sit on the boards in the MENA region?
So after hearing all three of them, I think I'm done. I think I'm just
not at all. We just started.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure what I can add to this.
Not at all.
Obviously, you know, it's an absolute honor to be on a panel like this. And Malak, thank you so much for all your encouragement. Honestly speaking, I consider myself really, really lucky. And I have to thank my father for this. Had he not made the decision to move to the UAE back in the 70s, I would not have grown up in a city that tells you, dream as big as you want. You don't need to worry about anything as a constraint. The leadership of the country wants to hear us. The best part is I'm Indian and I grew up in Dubai and I consider Dubai a bigger home than I do India, having said that. It is a phenomenal ethos that they carry, that they want to see you perform. It's not about gender, it's not about race, it's not about ethnicity. It is all about what are you bringing to the table, how are you adding to our economy, how are you boosting not just our reputation, but also helping the people around you to become bigger and better versions of themselves. So my company would not be what it is today had I not grown up in a city where the leadership demands that you put yourself out there and excel. and excel to a point where everybody else starts benchmarking you. Like, I will give you an example. In my company, we're retailers. We do brands, right? And we do our own stores. We have brought our fit out time, and when I say fit out, it's from ceiling to flooring to the whole fit out to 14 days for a big box, which is 10,000 square feet. Our principals, who come from Canada, US, everywhere in the world, take 4 months. They're looking at us and saying, oh my God, like, teach us. Tell us, how the hell do you do this in 14 days? We just did a ASIC store in 14 days. So I'm just saying that growing up, I think environment makes a huge impact on the kind of business or the kind of person that you become. Hence, in our company, yes, of course, there is still a gender gap, but I think it's more performance driven than any kind of, maybe there are subconscious biases, but definitely not biases that I can pinpoint and say, that's the reason why we're not hiring. Having said that, I think there are key things that companies can do, and we spoke about it in the earlier panel as well. One of them being parental leave. Rather than sort of labeling it and saying maternal leave or paternal leave, it should be called parental leave. If the woman's career is on a trajectory that requires her to come back to work in 3 weeks, then she should have the confidence that the father of the child will look after the child. Why does it always have to be the woman that is deemed the primary caregiver? If she chooses to, that's fine. But at least, like all of you said, right? Give her the option. It's empowering to just have the option to do that. Secondly, I think Middle East it's the one region where we do rely a lot on the men in our family or in our surroundings to actually support us. And I have to give credit to my husband, who after every child said to me, okay, you've had your year, come back to work. And after every child, for him to say, come back to work, meant A, he needed me, and B, he was accepting the fact that I will shine or possibly even outshine him. So what I'm trying to say is that it's the one region where you do expect the men to actually step up and say, you know what, I'm here for you, I'll support you. And I think having someone in the leadership of the country, of the company, as a woman at the helm, makes a huge impact on how everybody else around you thinks. Like someone in the earlier panels mentioned Her Highness Sheikha Fatima. She's the reason why so many policies, and you feel so safe working and functioning in that country. So I'm so proud that, you know, we've got Saudi Arabia, we've got Qatar, and we've got Libya and Canada together, and we've got UAE. So I think it's a phenomenal panel for the GCC.
And Jordan, Palestine as well. So I will have, we still have time, but I really want to ask this closing question, and I want you to be, you know, generous and share with us, what does achieving an equality moonshot mean to you in the context of Middle East? And what steps do you believe are crucial for all stakeholders to take in making these efforts tangible, actionable, and measurable, with considering deeply our harsh reality in the MENA region?
So when we think of the equality moonshot, we have to define it in a region where there is not equality. So the kindest thing that we could do is recognize that equality moonshot will look and feel and sound different in each part of our regions. And those of us that are able to leapfrog and take not just the moonshot, the sunshot, and the universal shot, should be documenting the how and allowing that to be open source and extend the hand of hospitality and kindness and generosity to those that need the time and space to catch up to us. Our moonshot should also not be defined in the order of me first. It is simply, this is the stage that I am at. I am not better or worse whether I am first or last. It is simply in the context of where I am. And the kindest thing I think we can do for women is to recognize there's not one singular woman. We are women in ecosystems of women, in ecosystems that are some patriarchal, some matriarchal. It just depends on the individual location and environment. And if we can have the humility to realize our success may not be the only benchmark, but have the humility to recognize others may need to succeed in a different way. We give them the opportunity to define their femininity, their moonshots, and their equity for themselves. We need to unburden women from the universality and singularity of the woman. And so that is what my hope would be.
I'm into that. Alanoud.
What do we say after Princess Reema? Honestly, I think it falls down to culture. I mean, I agree totally with Princess Reema, and culture takes time to change. And I think we now need the support of men. We are ready to contribute. We are already dreaming, and we want to do so much. But we need to be enabled more. We need to be given the confidence that we can, and we don't want to be labeled anymore. I mean, I attend meetings. Usually, I'm the only female in the room. If I say something in this tone, she's aggressive. If I say an opinion, she's difficult to deal with. But when men do it and they raise their voice in their meetings, I mean, they call them, he's a man. Assertive, exactly. So I just hope that we can support each other. I think it's important that the men in this room take this message back and put themselves in our shoes and understand where we're coming from, because it's not easy to be a woman in the Arab world. No.
So I think there's, I think rage can be incredibly mobilizing for communities. I don't think it can be very sustaining. I think hope can be very sustaining. And I think we need a marriage of the two. I think we need enough frustration and anger with the status quo to say, I'm going to do something about it. And I think we need enough hope and vision to say, okay, this is where I'm going to go with it. And for me, a moonshot for the Middle East isn't just a moonshot for the Middle East. It is that women in the region become an example to the world. That we're not just on panels talking about the region, economy in the region, human rights in the region. No. We get to talk about it globally. We lead global organizations. We lead global companies. We are global leaders. That, to me, is the moonshot. And I think, to my colleague's point about kind of recognizing the different identities we all bring, I think one thing that we do have to be honest about is this is about power. At the end of the day, women's rights is a power negotiation. And very rarely in power negotiations, with all due respect to all of the wonderful men in this room, very rarely in power negotiations do people voluntarily give up power. So I encourage you to be aggressive. I encourage you to walk into rooms confidently. I encourage you to do your research, to know your facts, to show up first, to leave last. Because if you put yourself in a position of power, and I mean this wholeheartedly, you take on accountability for yourself and for every other person, every other woman you bring into the room with you. I encourage you to hold those positions of power, but I encourage you, when you do them, to be absolutely fearless and audacious about it.
Sima.
So I'm going to actually end with a poem that I wrote that really moved me about everything that I've been through in the last 24 hours. Please bear with me. meeting all these wonderful women and learning their stories. So, exactly. So, it's called Woman Human. We are idolized, criticized, fantasized, and for all that we shall never apologize. It's sometimes hard to be human, but it's even harder to be a woman human. Proving myself in so many ways truly takes up most of my days. Daughter, wife, mother, sister. Hey, I'm doing my best, mister. When do we really have time to grow unless family, friends, and frolic we let go? It's time to shine bright and go on our way to a goal that may be near or far away. Girlfriend, let's not look for a ladder to climb. Here's a rope, let me pull you up. It's our time.
So, with closing, allow me with closing this session, allow me first to thank our distinguished speakers. And I really want to ask the audience, I want you just to ask kindly yourselves what we can do more. How we can give more to ourselves and to the world, more kindness, openness, compassion, and bring peace, economic stability to our region, to our world. Thank you so much.